Hi, this is Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse Frugally, and I do love me some fall, and I really love me some vintage. I am going to start with some oranges, basic things you have around your home. I dehydrated some for Christmas, and while I was at it, I cut some oranges in half and dehydrated some to make for this project. If you saw my vintage haul last week, you will have seen this beautiful vintage cigar box, and I thought this would be perfect for this project. It was less than $1, cleaned it up good. It does have an ink stain I cannot get out, so I'm going to use the other side of this, fill it with some floral foam and some other just bits and pieces to keep it still. And then I am going to glue into my dehydrated oranges some different size cinnamon sticks, and then I'm going to press those into the foam. I think this is a bit rustic, but I do know back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, these are the kind of projects we would do around the house with things that we had around the house or could get outside to keep our home decor inexpensive. So I am going to use the items I have in my yard and around my home. I have some Spanish moss and some fall colored picks for florals or for berries. And then I am going to take some regular acorns and pine cones, and then these adorable acorns I made out of an acorn cap and some fiber, some wool. If you ever do any felting or you have any wool, or you could even use yarn, you can make yourself these adorable little acorns in different colors. So I have a variety: tan, oranges, browns, and creams, and I am going to add them with some natural acorns to this. And then my husband got me this gorgeous real bird nest, and I kept it in the freezer for a week to make sure that there was nothing, no bugs and such in it. And then I am going to just add a little bit of some green moss and some other natural elements to this box. Years ago, I got this box of little dehydrated pods of sorts that look like little pumpkins, and so I am going to add some of those into the nest. And then once I have this to my liking with a few feathers, I am going to make this a little of the kitschy 50s 60s feel for vintage. And I am going to just take the backside of a paintbrush and I am going to add some little white dots all over these pumpkins, because that just sort of screams vintage to me. And so here it is on my table with a little bird in that same color tone, with the bucket I made a week or two ago for another vintage fall video that I did. So if you missed that one, you definitely want to make sure you go back and see that if this is your vibe. And I think that this came out really sweet, very natural, something very inexpensive that you can do around your home. Find a nice vintage element from your stash and create something that speaks to you for this fall season. It does not have to cost money. It can be virtually free. If you live especially in an area like I do, where pine cones and acorns are all over the place. And that takes me on to item number 2. But before I do, I want to say this collaboration is being hosted by Dawn at Shabby Meets Bling, and Monica Up All Night DIY, Kristen Fifth Sparrow No More, and Annie from Indie Annie Jones. Their channels will be in my description box with a link to the playlist of all the other creators joining in for this wonderful shabby chic or vintage fall. So you will see both. This is one you're not going to want to miss. My second is this gorgeous bucket. This may lean toward antique more than it is vintage. I don't know. It is definitely old. It has gorgeous rusty metal all around it. It has a beautiful handle. It's lovely wood. It's in great shape. I'm not a huge fan of the orange. So I washed it in my sink, and then while I had it in my sink, I took my grunge mix. I drink ground coffee, so I just take the coffee grounds, put them in a little bit of water with cinnamon and spice, nutmegs, pumpkin spice, whatever you like. And then I just brushed that, left it on my deck to dry, and that took some of the orange off and gave it a little bit more of, I don't know, vintage feel, I guess. I just wiped away some of the excess coffee grounds and then filled that with some paper that I got in a box of something, no doubt, from Amazon. And some of this fill came in a gift pack once upon a time. Never throw anything away. And I have one of these pumpkins that I bought last year or even the year before at Hobby Lobby when it was 90% off. So I believe they're $7, so that means I spent $1.40 for this paper mache pumpkin, and it has fantastic bones. I really, really like it, and you can do so much. You can decoupage this, you can transfer, you can use paint inlays, you can just go crazy with this. I am going to do the 1980s, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but the 1980s are when white pumpkins came out. So believe it or not, 80s and 90s are still considered vintage. My God, I feel old when I say this. But anyway, I am going to add to this with some modeling clay. I am not a fan of the real stubby, stumpy little peduncle or stem on this, and so I am going to make my own stem here with the modeling clay, and I am just going to glue that on with the Quick and Thick, and then once I get that on, I am going to add a little bit more glue to the base and press that all around to make it look more natural, like it is actually part of this pumpkin. You can add some striations in this with a razor blade or a sharp object if you want, but I kind of like it smooth like this, so I'm going to leave that. And then I'm going to just press that into the creases and make it look like one. Now, I don't have time for this video for this to dry. Unfortunately, I am running a little behind here, so I am going to have to go ahead and add some color on top of this while it is still wet. But once it dries thoroughly, I can go back and touch that up. I took a couple of artificial leaves in my stash, and then, of course, I need a hole, so I just used a hammer and a skewer and glued that into there. And then I am just going to paint the stem brown and then go into the creases of the pumpkin. And I'm just going to use antiquing wax for this, not paint. Certainly if you want it to be true brown, you would use a paint. But I'm going to see what it looks like when this dries, and then over time I may add a little bit more if it's not dark enough to my liking. But I, at the moment, really like the way that it's looking. Of course, I take a paper towel and wipe that back because I don't want it to be so extreme, and I just want it to look like it is, a pumpkin from a patch. And then I did add a little bit of that to the green as well because the green was a little bit bright for me, just to tone that down just a little bit. And that is pretty much all I'm going to do with this pumpkin. I'm going to add it to this gorgeous bucket, and I am going to add a little bit of crocheted doily, something a little granny chic, and display that in my home and next to the antique grandfather's clock that I have here in my living room. And I love, love, love this look. This, to me, screams vintage fall for my home. I think that it is absolutely perfect. But I would love to know what you think. Are you a fan of white pumpkins, or do you prefer the grayish green, or do you prefer the orange? Do you decorate with all the different colors? Let me know what it is that you prefer when you see these pumpkins, because I am such a fan of the white ones. I have them everywhere. Now, item number 3, I've had this laundry room sign in my laundry room for many, many years, and I don't have room for it anymore, so I decided that I was going to take the new holiday release IOD mold, and I was going to use it for this project. I put the molds, the pine cones and the greenery in that. And then I also had a couple of other molds in my stash that had pine cones. So that way I have a number of different sizes, kind of a middle size and a small size pine cone. So I am just going to go ahead and lay these out, kind of press them into one another. And then once I have the layout the way that I want it to be, I will pull it back, glue it down, and move on from here. I need your help. What to do with the centerpiece of this. I thought about putting a clay pumpkin and I thought against it. I don't want my whole house filled with pumpkins. I thought about decoupaging a picture, something underneath this. I thought about just pressing with some tacks, a piece of fabric or some decoupage or even just some postcards. I don't know. I just don't know what I should do with the midsection of this. So let me know what you think. Now, after I get that all glued down and that dries, the next day I come in here with some like Java brown chalk paint. And I am going to just primarily cover this whole thing because, of course, I want to cover the laundry room sign, the words of that. I like the rustic wood, but I want the feel of the wood to come through, but not obviously anything that's in black. And I also want to cover the bulk of the dry clay with the brown as a base coat. Once I get this color on and dry with my heat gun, I am then going to play with some colors until I get the look that I want. Now, this is, of course, personal. But after I have the brown base coat, I'm going to go over it with a, I guess it's kind of a cream or a taupe color. And then I'm going to take a cloth and pull some of it back, especially on the clay pieces. And then I'm going to take that color again and I'm going to fill in more of the wood board with that and not the clay. I like the board itself to have more of that color, but to clay, not, to have a little bit more of the brown undertones. I used a little bit of glaze, and then I took a white chalk paint and dry brushed over the clay to bring that out, keeping the brown down in the crevices and the tops of it to be a little bit more light. But of course, as I've said, totally up to you if you do this how you want it to be. And again, I am just going to display it like this until I figure out what to do, if anything, with the empty space. So I didn't want to put a word and I just haven't found the right thing. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I did think I could actually use it for Christmas. And this is how I have this displayed, just hanging around my home for now. I'll probably move it elsewhere, but I thought that it looked nice and vintage in this space. If you have enjoyed this video, please like it. Please subscribe if you are not subscribed. I have so much more coming your way. And thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you in the next one. Take care.